Finnegans Wake, Book 1, Episode 3. Tessie is dense. Corpo de Baraggio. You spoof of visibility in a freak fog of mixed sex cases among goats, hill cat, and plain mousy, bigamy Bob and his old shanlock. The Blackfriars treacle plaster outrage belittled. Therewith was released in that king's trick of Humidia a poisoning volume of cloud barrage indeed. Yet all they who heard or redelivered are now with that family of bards and Virgo Bretas himself and the crowd of caraculectors, as much no more as be they not yet now, or had they then not ever been. Can be in some future, we shall presently hear amid those suave players of Inkerman the mime, mumming the Mick and his Mick, miming their Maggies, Hilton Saint-Just, Mr. Frank Smith, Ivan Saint-Ostel, Mr. J.F. Jones, Coleman of Lucan taking four parts, a choir of the Odalio Doyles, double-sixing the chorus in Fen McCall and the Servan Fieries of Loch Neck, Galloper Tropler and Hurley Quinn the zitherer of the past with his merry men all, zim, 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 zim. Of the person sin, this Eirigla saga, which thorough readable to int from end, is from rub to bottom all false tissues, anti-libelous and non-actionable, and this applies to its whole volume. Of poor Osty Fosty, described as quite a musical genius in a small way, and the owner of an exceedingly nice ear, with tenorist voice to match, not alone, but a very major poet of the poorly meritory order. He began Tunisonian, but worked his passage up as far as the we all hang together Animandovites. No one end is known. If they whistled him before he had curtains up, they are whistling him still after his curtains doom. Eh, foo, his husband, poor old Ahara, Akarov, crestfallen by things and down at heels at the time, they squeak, accepted the Zasnak Ardri shilling at the conclusion of the Crimean War, and having flown his wild geese, alone in crowds to wander on like Shuli Luni, enlisted in Tyrone's horse, the Irish Whites, and soldiered a bit with Wolsey under the assumed name of Blanco Fusilovna Buklovich, spurious, after which the car and the marble halls of Pumpcourt Columbarium, the home of the old sea kings, looked upon each other and queth their haven evermere, for it transpires that on the other side of the water, it came about that on the field of Vasilev's Cornix, inauspiciously with his unit, he perished, saying, this papal leafless to old chap give, raw chocolates for mouther and louth. Fool. Poor old dear Paul Horan, to satisfy his literary as well as his criminal aspirations, at the suggestion thrown out by the doomster in loquacity lunacy, so says the Dublin Intelligence, was thrown into a Ridley's for inmates in the northern counties. Under the name of Irani, he may have been the utility man of the troop, capable of sustaining long parts at short notice. He was. Sordid Sam, a dour, decent de Blanker, the unwashed, haunted always by his ham, the unwished. At a word from Israfel the summoner, passed away painlessly after life's ups and downs one Halloween night, ebrus and in the state of nature, propelled from behind into the great beyond by foot blows, Coolin clouted upon his oyster and Atlas on behanged and behooved and behicked and behulked of his last fish and blood bed scrappers, a Northwegian, and his mate of the she-wolving class. Though the last straw glimpsed his bearing, the stage stunk hard, is said, the pitfall and gagged him as prompt boxer, to have solemnly said, as had the brief thought, but fell in till his head like a bass dropped necked fust until a bone crate cogged. Me drams, O Lachlan's, has come through. Now let the centuple selves of my egorge, as Nicholas de Cusack calls them, of all of whose I in my hereinafter, of course by recourse, demission me, by the coincidence of their contraries, we amalgamerge in that identity of undiscernibles, where the Baxters and the Fleshmans, may they cease to be Divellins, and, but at this point, through the iron thrust of his cocksport start, might have prepared us, we are well nigh stink-pottered by the mustard puns in the tail end. This out and in brown candlestock melt Nolans into peas, an var. Disliken as he was to Druriodrama, her wife Langley, the prophet, and the decentest dozenest short of a frusker, whoever stuck his spickle through a spoke, disappeared, in which to-doing he has taken all the French leaves unveilable out of Callum Quiller's pravities. From the surface of this earth, that austral plane he had transmarried himself to, so entirely sporelessly, the mother of the book with a dust whisk tabularizing his obliteration done upon her involucrum, as to tickle the speculative to all but opine, since the Levy who might have been Langley may have really been a redivivus of paganism, or a volunteer Woden, that the hobo, who possessed a large amount of the humoresque, had transjeweled his funster's latitat to its finsterest interimost. Vichy. Again, the father San Brown tea and toaster that acquaintest of yarn spinners is Padre Don Bruno, true and truster to the Queen of Yar Spain, was the Reverend. The sodality director, that eupeptic vice flayer, a bare-faced Carmelite, to whose palpitating pulpit, which of us but remembers the rare valent and honorable Prato Mr. Nolan Moore and Braun, sinning society sirens, see the Roman Catholic Prespasum, fortunately became so enthusiastically attached and was an objectionable ass who very occasionally cockaded a raffles ticket on his hat, which he wore all to one side like the handle of his pen. If her elegance saw him, she'd have the canary, and was semi-privately convicted of malpractices with his hot-wash table knife, glossing over the cark in his pocket. That same snob of the Dunhill, fully several yearshams riper, encountered by the general on that red-letter morning or May noon Jove's day, and were they? Foot, foot. When Fishland Phil once throws his lip, 'tis folly to be fortune flaunting, and whoever's gone to Mick's hotel by the salt say water, there's next to nothing we can do, for he's never again to see. It is nebulous and autodidact fact of the commonest that the shape of the average human cloudy fizz, whereas sallow has long days faded, frequently altered its ego with the passing of the showers, not original. Whence it is a slopperish matter, given the wet and low visibility, since it, in this Scheherazade of 1001 nightinesses, that sort of certainty which would identify the body never falls. To identify the individuum in scratch wig, square cut, stock lavalier, regattable oxeter, baggy pants, and shufflers. He is often alluded to as Sly Patrick, the lad in the lane, with already an incipience, lust, in the direction of area baldness. One is continually first meeting with odd sorts of others or all sorts of ages. Who was asked by free board school shirkers in drenched coats over all, Will, Con, and Otto, to tell them over a gate, Vol, Pav, and Dev, that Fishabid goat story of the hardly creditable adventures of the haberdasher, the two Kirchies, and the three ankle chums in their bearskin goats. Girls and youngers, but he has changed a lot in Torkel's time. Ya da tra, gathery pimp, shestes, shosaphet, oko de boko nine. Those many warts, those slummy patches, half-sinster wrinkles. What has come over the face on whole broader, eh? And, shrine of Mount Muse save us, the large fungo park he has grown. Drink. Sport's a common thing. It was the Lord's own day for damp, to wait for the postponed regattas eventualizing is not a battlecock shuttle door juxtamare only. And the request for a fully armed explanation was put, in lieu of Pat, to the party, a native of the sister isle, Meathman or Meccan, by his brogue X-race eyes, local colour and local odour, which are said to have been average clown Turkish. Though the campulous voiced nasal liquids and the way he sneezed at Z's haul us back to the craigs and brins of the Silurian ore devices, who, the lesser pilgrimage accomplished, had made, Pat's and Pig's older insult, the southeast bluffs of the stranger steppe shore, a regi fugium pusicatorum, hence hindquarters, as he paused at even chime for some or so minutes. Hit the pipe, Danny boy. Time to one, barman. I'll take 10 to win. Amid the devil's one doldrum, Apple by her blossom window and Charlotte at her toss panamancy has sole admirers, his only tarts in store. For a fragrant coulabosh during his weekend pastime of executing with Annie Oakley deadliness, the consummatory pairs of provocatives of which remain provokingly but two, the ones he fell for, Lily and Tutu Corkum. Empties, which had not very long before contained Ride's family. You rued that before, Sophie, but all the bottles in Sodom's history will not soften your blood athirst. Stout. Having reprimed his repeater and residuumed his timepiece, his revenances, with still a life or two to spare for the space of his occupancy of a world at a time, rose to his feet, and there, far from Tolkaheim in a quiet English garden, commonplace, since known as Whittington Wild, his simple, intensive, purulent vocality, my dear brothers, my most dear brothers, as he, so is a supper as is a sipper, spake of the one and told of the compassionate, called up before the triad of precocious scare-makers, score-taking, spegulo ne helpus al malbello, mi credas qui vi estas prava, viadote la visago respondas fraulino. The now to usher mythical habiliments of our Far and Arthur of Ardone. Television kills telephony and brothers broil. Our eyes demand their turn. Let them be seen. And wolf-bone balefires blaze the trailmost, if only that Mary Nothing may burst her bibby buckshee. When they set fire, then she's got to glow, so we may stand some chances of warning to whatever Circa Batcha, Tum or Hum would like to know. The first Humphrey's latitudinous beaver with puggery behind, calaboose, belong Big Boss, belong Kanglatal, his four-in-hand bow, his elbarum sutart, the refaced unmentionables of Gingerine, the state slate umbrella, his gruff Wolseley Wellesley with the humdrum knops, and the gauntlet upon the hand, which in an hour not for him solely evil had struck down the might he might have been, the stare, of whom his nation seemed almost already to be about to have need. Then, stealing his thunder, but in the befitting legomena of the smaller country, probable words possibly said of field family gleaming, a bit duskish and flavored with a smile, seeing as how his thoughts consisted chiefly of the Cheerio, he aptly sketched for our soon-to-be second parents, Sook and CYB, the touching scene. The solence of that stilling. Here one might have fin fell. Boomster, room bomb bonant. It seems like a landscape from Wildu Picturesque or some scene on some dim heiress, dumb as mum's mutinous. This mimage of the 77th cousin of Christensen is audible to us across the wineless air, no odor nor mere eerie nor less potent of suggestion than in the tales of the Tingmount, prigged. And they are oft after, jaunty jogging on an Irish vis-a-vis, In steadily, with shoulder to shoulder, Jehu will tell to Christianer, saint to sage, the Humphreid of that fall and rise, while Daisy winks at her pinker sister among the tussocks, and the couple between the shafts mocks the couple on the car. And as your who may look like how on the other side of his big beltry, your tears and clothes, your nose and paradigm may re-rise in Aaron. Follow we up his whip vindicative. Thurstons, lo, be bold, la arboro lo petrozo, the Augustan peace betotham oaks, the monolith rising stark from the moonlit pine barren. In all fortitudinous, ajacious, rout and noisy tenuosity. The Angelus hour, with ditchers bent upon their farm, used tensols, the soft belling of the fallow deers, doremus genuine, advertising their milky approach as midnight was striking the hours, tea. And how brightly the great tribune outed the sharkskin smoke wallet, imitation, from his frock, kippers, and by Joshua he tips on a topping swank cheroot, none of your swellish soid, quite the reverse. And how manfully, he says, pluck to pluck, and leakin for lukin, he was to just pluggy well suck that brown boy, oh my son, and spend a whole half hour in Havana. Sorer of the creeksman would not thor to be old high Gothsprog. Wherefore, he met master, he mean to say. He do, sire, bester of red publicans, at Eaglecock Hostel on Lorenzo Tooley Street, and how he wished his honour the bannocks of Gort and Mora and Breed and Puthrick, your lordship, and a starch box sitting in the pit of St. Stomach's. A strange wish for you, my friend, and it would poleaxe your son's grandson utterly through your own old sweat and swear florowants, heaved at hawk many as the times when they were terrified by the hits. Cheers for up King Billy and Crook Cramwells, down a boo. Hup, boys, and had him. See, I'll beam they're lost. We've found remembrancers, their hours to date, link these airs to hear. But well, where are those yours of yesterday's, far seeing the rich and Poolall woman, Charactericus and his Anne Van Vogt, D-E-E-D, ended, or sleeping soundlessly? Favor with your tongues, intendite. Any dog's life you list, you may still hear them at it, like sixes and seventies, as ever sure as Halley's Comet. Eula, Maimon, Sobrange women, Storthing boys and Dumagirls as they passed its bleak and bronze portal of your Casa Concordia. Hoodoo morny, mini frickens, whirlads hardy det, los doran left ladies, Q, Miliciento tringatitu dui scudi, tippity kyrie tippity, cha kai ratikai makersad, dispense me usted, senor, en son suco, sabe? O the bron orum, a cothridge, thinking thou gaily, lick pa flehe pa lisi lang lang, epialu eq batiste, nu vanver don liptit boing is meme de Bumbeck, e meas de Portacali. Os pipos mios, es demasiada grarso por o piccolo pochino. We fi duro. Cochis sabad? Merci, and you? Come on, talk. And cod, says he, with mugger's tears, would you care to know the prize of a laird? Maggie's nick your nighty novel. Mass Travener's at the mic again. And that back belly is the buck to go at us. McGay, chap-jappy fellow, I call our univals to witness, as sicker as moi liffy eggs is known by our good house halters, from your hundreds of mammoths, to be which they commercially are in ahoy high British quarters, conventional. My guest house and cow-endal credits will immediately stand open as straight as that neighboring monument's fabrication before the hygienic gill. This was where the reverent Sabbath and bottle breaker, with fur bulk forth-stretched, touched upon his tricolored boater, which he uplifted by its pickled hoopee. He gave Stetson 1.25 for it. Well as oleaginosity of ancestralosis scadulated down the both pendencies of his mutsuhito lip-tails. Sen capitulo, a more modestuous conciliabulate, never curled a torn pocket-mouth. Cordially inviting the adolescents, who he was wising up to do in like manner, what all did, so as he was able to add. Lo be before the great schoolmasters. I tell you no story. Smile. The house of Atriox is fallen in the dust. Ilium, me'eramor, mornomates, averging on blight like the Mundy banks of Feniana. But deeds bounds going arise again. Life, he himself said once, his biography, in fact, kills him very soon, if yet not after, is awake, livid or cricket, and on the bunk of our breadwinning lies the crops of our seed father, a phrase which the establisher of the world by law might predinately write across the chest front of all man or woman born. The scene, refreshed, reroused, was never to be forgotten. The Hannon Crusader ever intermuto emergent, for later in the century, one of that puisne band of fact-ferreters, then an ex-civile out of the custom huts retired hurt under the 65s Act in a dressy black modern style, and we were shining tan Burlingtons, tam hummed and dicky, quo prequos and pejegged, rehearsed it, pippa pointing with a dignified, copied bow to a name cousin of the late Archdeacon F.X. Preserved Coppinger. A hot fellow in his night, may the mouther of guard have mastic on him. In a pull woman of our first trans-Hibernian, with one still sadder circumstance, which is a Dirk and Dirk heart's curer, if ever to bring bouncing brimmers from marbled eyes. Cycloptically, through the window discs, and with eddying awes, the round eyes of the rent risers, back to back, buck to bucker, on their Irish chaunting car, beheld with interesting interestedness the clad pursue the bear the green the frore the clad again, as their convoy wheeled incircularly bound the gigantic's life tree, our fire-leaved lover-lucky Blomsterboom, phoenix in our woodlessness, haughty, cacumenal, erubescent, repetition, whose roots they be ashes with lustres of pains. For as often as the Archicadinus, pleasing aside his Irish field, and craving their auriculars to receptacle particulars before they got the bump of Castle Bar, mat and far, spoke of it by request all, hearing in this new reading of the part whereby, because of Dias and his machina, the new Gerrickson's grimacing grimaldism, hypostatized by substitution the axiomatic oro-rotundity of that once grand old Elrington ball, the copycuss's description of that fellow commuter's play upon countenance, but simply imagined themselves in their bosom's inmost core as pro tem locums, time sported, of course, the yawning abyss, as once they were seasiders, listening to the cocky shy-shooters, even song evocation of the doomed but always ventriculant agitator. No, not more, planger pound the billows o'er Thonawalia reef. Silk hoated, a walrus mustached against the dusk of scumring. Would that fain be St. Mizzen's calling? Holy places, and this fez brimless as brow of faithful toucher of the ground, did wish it were. Blessed be the bones, the gauzy power of his sword. His manslayers gun-wheeled or protended towards that overgrown lead pencil, which was soon, monumentally at least, to rise as Mali Dokudulan to be his mausoleum. Odin stood till stain at Maisie's A scold Chopin. Well, all over his exculpatory features, as Roland rung, a wee dropping of grief about to silenize his jujus, the ghost of resignation diffused a spectral appealingness as a young man's drown o'er the fate of his waters may gloat, similar in origin and accurate and effective to a beam of sunshine upon a coffin plate. Not olderwise, in the days of the beginning, would our traveller remote, unfriended from Van Diemen's land, some lazy skald or maundering poet, lift weary Willie his slow-cut snobstick eyes to the semi-signs of his zodiac, and lengthily lingering along flask-necked cracket cup, downtrodden brogue, turf sod, wild broom, cabbage, blad, stockfish, longingly learned that there at the Angel were her birds to him poteen and tea and praties and baccy and wine with woman worth warbling, and informally quasi begin to prequesmlile to quistithin. Nonsense, there was not very much windy new blowing at that given moment through the hat of Mr. Melancholy Slow. But in the pragma, what formal cause made a smile of that to think? Who was he to whom? O'Brien's not his name, nor the brown one is made. Whose are the place wares? Kiwasti kisker kither kitnabuja? Tal the tam of the tumulum, give the gav of the garoob. Be it cudgel player's country, or fish fellow's town, or leek licker's land, or pan gung povengreski. What Rainians raise, the rains have leveled, but we hear the pointers and can gauge their compass. For the melos yields the mode, and the mode the manners, placeman, plansyman, plowsyman, plab. Sin, 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 sin. The forefather folkers for a prize of 2 peaches with Ming, Ching, and Shunny on the Lilo lay. We'll sit down in the hope of the gooly goost, for the titheman troubleth, but his hantitat highs not here. They answer from their zones. Hear the 4 of them. Hark to roar of them. I, says our ma, and am proud o't. I, says Clonakilty, God help us. I, says Dean's Grange, and say nothing. I, says Barna, and what about it? Hee-haw! Before he fell hill, he feeled heaven. A stream outlapping streamlet coyly coiled him, cool of her curls. We were but Thermites then, we. Our ant-heap we sensed as a hill of Allen, the barrow for an people, one Jotner's fail, and it was a grummelung among the pork troop that wonder struck us, a thunder yonder. Thus the unfacts, did we possess them, are too imprecisely few to warrant our certitude. The evidence givers by Legpole too untrustworthily irreparable were his adjudgers are seemingly freak 3s, but his judicandis plainly -2s. Nevertheless, Madams to show us waxes largely more lifelike. Entrance 1, kudos, exits free. And our national gullery is now completely complacent, an exegious monument, airly perennious, oblige with your blackthorns, gaps to grace, and there many have paused before that exposure of him by old Tom Quad, a flashback in which he sits sated, goand about, in clericalese habit, watching bland souls slide dodsomely into the nethermore, a globule of Magdalousness about to corugitate his mild dewed cheek, and the tatta of a tiny Victorienne, Alice, pressed by his limper looser. Yet certes one is, ere the following winter had overed the pages of nature's book, until Cedarburg Ataclea became Dublina Tertia, the shadow of the huge outlander, Maledic, multivolt, magnoporus, had bulked at the bar of a rota of tribunals in Manor Hall as in Thieves' Kitchen, mid pillow talk and shithouse chat on Marlborough Green, as through Molesworth Fields. Here, sentence pro tried with Jedburgh justice, there, acquitted con testimony with benefit of clergy. His thing mod have undone him, and his mad thing has done him man. His beneficiaries are legion in the party created. They number up his years. Great Wheel Dunlop was the name on him. Be hung, all we are his bicycles. As holiday in his house, so was he priest and king to that. Ulvi came, envy saw, ivy conquered. Loo, loo, they have waved his green boughs o'er him as they have torn him limb from limb. For his mortification and expiration and damnation and annihilation, with shries and grida, de profund suspirs. Steady, Sullivans. Mannikins pause. Longstong's breech has fallen down, but Grania's spreads abroad. Ah, this day, fideli ones, and feel the Fletcher's balls, for the total of your flouts is not fit to fan his fettle. Oh, have a ring and sing, wool. Chin, 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 chin. And of course all chimed in with the utmost boviality, swiping rums and boyns and cherries, and ciders and negus and citronuts too. The strongers. Ho, ho, oh, ho, Mr. Big, you're about to be bagged in the bog again. Bug, but softly subside, hey, you fragassies. But lo, lo, by the threatening gods, human, erring, and condonable, with the statues of our Kuo, who is the mischiefs be our cooing, Ashu ashore there, the unforgettable tree shide looms up behind the jostling judgments of those, as all should owe, mal recapturable days. Tap and pat again. Fire first shot, missers the refusaliers. Pang, pyong, or Saxon Luti. Treat Tomix, soldiers free. Cockaleek and Kappa P of the Coldstream guards were walking in. Pardonnez-leur, je vous en prie, Montgomery Street. One voiced an opinion in which on either wide, pardonnez, nodding, all the Finner camps concurred. Je vous en prie. It was the first woman, they said, souped him that fatal Wells day, Lily Cunningham's, by suggesting him they go in a field. Roth, Maud, Elfar, Ruth Red still stand, wrath racked Roth, confessed Private Pat Marchison, retro, terse. Thus contenters with Santoy's play. One of our coming Wohall on the boards, who was resting for the moment, she has been called by a noted stagey elocutioner a waste packet sittins, was interviewed in a waste end beauty parlor, looking perhaps even more beauty flushed in her cherry dairy pado soy girdle and braces by the half moon and 7 stars, russets from the blackamoor's head, amongst the climbing boys at his eagle and child, and over the corn and hay empters at their black and all black, Mrs. F. A, set aside, half in stage of whisper to her confident glass, well keep recuperating her cartwheel chapot, a hat, and we now know what thimbles of Backets on Lallance atolls mean. She hoped, said Arthur, would get a Christmas portrait of orange and lemon-sized orchids with holigs and ether from the theatre of the innocent, as the world had been uncaned. Then, well, it is odorous comparissoning to the sprang flowers of his hearse day, which was a veritable garden potty for the rainworms and the charlatinas and all branches of clamatitis. It has been such a wonderful north entirely, added she, with many regards to Maha's frangipanses. Tart, prehistoric, obittered to his dictaphone, an entomologist. His propen is a properismenon, a dustman knock-named 7 churches in the employ of Messrs. Ashburn, Saltpeter, and Ashbury-born prayer makers, Glintaluk. was asked by the sisterhood the vexed question during his midday collation of liver and buckram, alternatively with steak and kidney pie in a hash house, and thank heaven, responded impulsively, "We have just been propagandering his nullity suit and what they took out of his ear among my own crush. All our fellows at O'Day's Sages with a rat or calaman, he is a cemented brick, bucket all, a more not usually sober car driver, who was jauntily hosing his runabout, Ginger Dane, took a strong view. Laurie hosed her as he talked, and this is what he told Reitman. Irawacker is just a plain pink joint reformee in private life, but folks all have it by Bremen's laws. He has parliamentary honors. Icecafler said, Luigi's, you know that man's brilliant, Savarin. One fois, you wish to have the omelette? Yes, lady? Good, mein lieber. Your heg, you must break himself. See, I crack, so. He sit in the pool, dumb-dimped. A perspirer over 60 who was keeping up his tennises panted, he need know how toi to elect in famatios, but a diff pair flannels climb wall and trespassing on doorbell. After full-blown Braddon, hear this fresky trottorella, a railway's barmaid's view, they call her Spiltier's Rue, was thus expressed. To sympathizers of the Dole line, Death Avenue, and those objects of her pity-prompt administrance, to wet man in his siphon, ahem, it is ever too late to whistle when Phyllis floods her stable. It would be scarlet shame to jail him in lockup, as was proposed to him by the Sedums creature. What matter what merry tricks went off with his revolver her in connection with him being an orphan and enjoining such wicked ilth him. Well done, Drum Colloquial. Kitty Tyrrell is proud of you, was the reply of a BOT official. Oh, blame not the board. While the daughters Benkletter murmured in unison, call for Gill his jury legs. Brian Linsky, the cub cursor, was questioned at a shouting box, ball on a bracket, and gave a snappy comeback when saying, Paw, once more I'll hell bowl. I am for the caveman chase and Sahara sex, burk you. Them two bitches ought to be leashed, Canham. Up hog and whore hunt. Paw. A would-be martyr who is attending on Senate assistants, where he is being taught to wear bracelets, when grilled on the point, revealed the undoubted fact that the consequence would be that so long as Sankyamunde played his mango tricks under the Mista tree, with shady Apsara sheltering in his leaves license, and his shadowers torrified by the potent bolts of interdiction, there would be fights all over Cuxhaven. Tosh. Missioner Ida Wombwell, the 17-year-old revivalist, said concerning the coincidence of interfizzing with grenadines and other respectable and disgusted persons using the park, that perpendicular person is a brute, but a magnificent brute. Caligula, Mr. Daniel McGrath, bookmaker well known to Australian perusers of the Sydney Parade Bulletin, was as usual antipodal with his striving to die, opening to mellow, where splash, cobbler. We have meet too early, sang out El Caplan Boycott with his famous Padres Tourders Cape cast. Meet too early, Matadeer. Then Meiklejohn, presenter of SS Smack and Ollies, was probiverbal with his upsy-duxit, mutatus mutandus. Doran's lord, Sniffpox, and Morrigan's lady, Flatterfun, took sides and crossed and bowed to each other's views and recrossed themselves. The dirty dubs up in their flies went too free, echoed the Danely drabs down in their sanities, una mona. Sylvia silenced the girl detective, Memi nerva, but by now one hears turtlings all over Dublin. When supplied with information as to the several facets of the case, in her cozy-dozy bachelor's flat, quite overlooking John O'Dream's mews, leaned back in her really, truly easy chair to query restfully through her vowel-threaded syllables, "Have you ever thought, we Pautu, that sheer greatness was his tragedy? Nevertheless, according to my considered attitudes, for this act he should pay the full penalty pending pursuance as Pew subsection 32, section 11 of the CLA Act 1885. Anything in this act to the contrary notwithstanding." Charlie Jilk began to silk, for he couldn't get home to Jelsey, but ended with, "He's got the sack that helped him out in stitch of his gladsome rags." Mayer, a naval rating, seated on one of the granite cromlech sets of our new fish shambles for the usual aerating after the ever-popular act, with whom were Cuesta and Puella, piquant and quite, this had a cold in her brain, well, that felt sink in her stomach, what's what, was encouraged, although near varnished himself, by one of his co-affiants to get your breath, Walt and Gobbet, and when they're chidden by her fastra sastra to saddle up your pants. "Navel," this cord replied to her other snacks kissing. "I lay my 2 finger buttons, fiancé Mayor," he speaks. "He was to blame about your 2 velvet thighs up Ornaments Hill, as who can I blame him, or any other pissman? But I also think, Pooly Wally, by the siege of his trousers, there was someone else behind it. You bet your bottom blarneys about their 3 drummers down Keezer's Lane." Trite. But these mere marchant tailors' fablings of a race referent with Odman Rex, is now all seen, heard, then forgotten? Can it was, one is fain in this leaden age of letters, now to wit, that so diversified outrages, they have still to come, were planned and partly carried out against so staunch a covenanter? If it be true, then any of those recorded ever took place, for many we trow, but yes to and denayed of, are given to us by some who use the truth but sparingly, and we, on this side, ought to sorrow for their pricking pens on that account. The seventh city, Urovivla, his citadere of refuge, whither, would we believe the laymen in their counts, beyond the outraved gales of Adriatic, changing clues with a bagger malster, the Hedgerite had fled. Silentius issue meant under night's alto sonority, ship alone, a raven of the wave. Be mercy Mara, a he whence Rahulus, from the Ostman's dirt by on the old Vic, to forget in expiating manslaughter, and rebirthing in remerriment out of dead sickness to divine previdence. If you are looking for the builder, deep your ear on the movie tone. To league his lot, palm and pat, with a papacy. For mine, veen I thee gift take, and bind my husband I thee halter. The was to be land, a lotus land, a luxurious land, emerald Ilium, the peasant pastured, in which by the 4th commandment with promise his days apostolic were to be long by the abundant mercy of him which thundereth from on high, murmured would rise against him with all which in them were franchisable and inhabitants, as tea as agora, helots fillets, do him hurt, poor jink, ghostly following bodily, as were he made orse for them, the corruptible lay quick, all saints of incorruption of unholy nation, the common or Aaron garden castaway, and red resurrection to condemn, so they might convince him, first Pharaoh, Humphreys, Cheops, Exarchus, of their proper sins. Business bred to speak with a stiff upper lip to all men, and most occasions the man we would have took little short of fighting chances, but for all that he or his care were subjected to the horrors of the premier terror of Errorland. Perhaps we seem to us, the real us, to be reading Aramenti in the 6th sealed chapter of the Going Forth by Black. It was after the show at Wednesbury that one tall man, humping a suspicious parcel, when returning late amid a dense particular on his home way from the second house of the Board and Burgess Christie minstrels by the old spot, Rise Corner, had a Barkis revolver placed to his face with the words, "You're shot, Major," by an unknowable assailant, masked, against whom he had been jealous over Lotta Crabtree or Pomona Evelyn. More than that, when the waylayer, not a localized diocesan or even of the Glendalough but hailing for the pro of Little Britain, mentioning in a by-the-way that he, the crosshopper, had, in addition to Reed's cutlass centiblade, a loaded Hobson's, which left only twin alternatives, as vice versa, either he would surely shoot her, the aunt, by pistol, she could be okay sure of that, or failing of such, bash in Patch's blank face beyond recognition, pointedly asked with Gaelish gall, would Kerblizzard's business Thornton had with that Kane's fender, only to be answered by the aggravated assaulted that that was the snaps for him mid-weeks, desultory will go and find out, if he was showery well able. But how transparently non-true, gentle writer. His feet one is not a tall man, not a tall man, no such parson, no such fender, no such lumber, no such race. Was it supposedly in connection with the girls, Myramie Huey or Coloris Archer, under Flaggy Bridge? For Anne there is but one live, and her new bridges are old. Or to explode his 12-chamber and force a shrievalty entrance that the heavy-built able body in a butcher blue blouse from One Life One suit, a menswear store, with a most decisive bottle of single in his possession, seized after dark by the town guard at Have You Caught Emerod's Temperance Gateway, was there in a gate's way. Fifthly, how parasoliloquizingly true-toned on his first time of hearing the wretch's statement that, muttering Irish, he had a gloriously a lot too much hangust or horseshoe fine to drink in the House of Blazes, the Parrot in Hell, the Orange Tree, the Glip, the Sun, the Holy Lamb, and last not least, in Ramatown Ship Hotel, since the morning moment he could distinguish a white thread from a black, till the engine of the laws declosed unto Murray and was only falling fill the flutard up against the gate's Pones pier, which, with the cow's bonnet atop of it, he forsook for a caterpillar, with purest, peaceablest intentions. Yet how lamely hobbles the hoy of his then pseudo-Joe-Cax explanation how, according to his own story, he was a process server and was merely trying to open Zosimus a bottle of stuff by mortally hammering his magnum bonum, the cur to the club, the sore, the savage, against the bloody gate for the boots about the swan, Morris Bean, who hastily into his shoes with nothing, his hauled bara tintack, and came down with a hump. Stemp and jumpet to the tilt yard from the waist asleep in his obi oni overclothes or choker, attracted by the Norse of guns, playing Delandia's Cartager on the Raglar Rock to Dullion, said, or prize safe in bed as he dreamed that he'd wealths in Mormon halls, when woken up by a fourth loud snore out of his land of Bailo, while Hickstree's moss was grazing in the moonlight, by hearing hammering on the pandywank scale emanating from the blind pig, and anything like it. Una, in the whole history of the Mullinkin Inn, he never. This battering babble, a lower at the door and side-posts, he always said, was not in the very remotest like the belty babble of a bottle of booze, which would not rouse him out of slumber deep, but reminded him loads more of the martial Aussie marses of foreign musicants instruments, or the overthrower to the third last days of Pompery, if anything. And that after this most nooningless nocturne, the young rain came down desperate, and the old Lithopotamus started ploughing all over the plains as mud as she could be, ruinating all the butcher's shirts and the baker's wischen togs, so that he be the chandelure of the raging daily. They were all night washing the waters of the weltering waters off white. Just one moment. A pinch in time of the ideal musketeers, Alphos, Burkos, and Caramus, leave Astrolabe for the astrologeries and for the love of the sciences and the honor of Caven's pike, Puttyweck back to Pamintul, and roll away the real world, the real world, the real world, and call all your smoke blushes, snow white and rose red, if you will have the real cream. Now for a strawberry frolic. Filons, filouche, cherchons la flamme, femme, 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 femme. Come on, ordinary man, with that large, big, nonobly head and that blanco Burbeck facial expression, Machinsky, Seopolopoulos, Duzanashu, or others. Your matchless mutton legs getting muscle-bound from being too pulled. Noah Beery weighed stone 1001 when Hazel was a hen. Now her fat's falling fast. Therefore, chatbags, why not yours? There are 29 sweet reasons why blossom time's the best. Elders fall for green almonds when they're raised on bruised stone root ginger, though it winters on their heads as if octumed round their waistbands. If you'd had pains in your hairs, you wouldn't look so orgabald. You'd have collie macaires on your lump of lead. Now listen, Mr. Lear, and stow that sweaty, funny damn simper. Take an old geezer who calls on his skirt. Note his sleek hair, so elegant, tableau vivant. He vows her to be his own honey lamb, swears they will be papa pals by Sam, and share good times way down west in a guaranteed happy love nest when May moon she shines, and they twinkle all the night, combing the comet's tail upright and shooting popkins at the stars. Cream puffs all to dime, every nice Missy Mackenzie's, for dear old grandpapa, he's gone on the razzle-dar, through grazing and casing and blazing at the stars. Compris? She wants her wardrobe to hear from above by return with cash, so as she can buy her Peter Robinson trousseau and cut a dash with Artie Burt or possibly Charlie Chance, who knows. So tallall, Mr. Hunker, you're too dada for me to dance. So off she goes. And that's how half the gals in towns has got their bottom drawers, while grandpapa, he's trying to hitch his braces onto his jars. But old Grum, he's not so clean dippy between sweet, you and yum. Not on your life, boy, not in those trousers, not by a large jugful. For someplace on the sly, where furfy he isn't by, old Grum has his gill number 2. Bravo, our Grum. And he would like to canoodle her too, some part of the time, for he is downright fond of his number 1, but oh, he's fair mashed on Peach's number 2, so that if he could only canoodle the 2, chivy, chivoo, all 3 would feel genuinely happy. It's as simple as ABC, the 2 mixers we mean, with their cherry bum chappy. For he is simply shamming dippy. If they were all afloat in a dream life boat, hugging 2 by 2 in a zoo-doo do you do, a toff for thee, missy missy for me, and how came me you, a Enso for Farber and his tippy tippin' down tippy, tip to tippy canoodle. Can you? Finny. Kick. With which claptrap and sonnet, 3 to a loaf, our mutual friends, the fender and the bottle at the gate, seem to be implicitly in the same bateau, said so to singin', bearing also several of the earmarks of design. For there is in fact no use in putting a tooth in a snipery of that sort, and the amount of all those sort of things which has been going on once a day in and twice a day out, every other next is die, among all kinds of promiscuous individuals at all ages, in private homes, in rebus publicus, and all over all, and elsewhere throughout secular sequence the country over, and over abroad, has been particularly stupendous. To be continued. Federals United Transports Unions for exultations of triumphant ecstasies. But resuming inquiries, will it ever be next morning the postal unionists, officially called carriers, letters, Scotch, limited, strange fate, fierce and giddy ex his height, de the losel that bucks around missive maids' gummybacks, to hand in a huge chain envelope, written in 7 diverse stages of ink, from blanche essence to lavandate, every pothook and pancrook bespeaking the wisher wife, superscribed and subpenciled by yours, a laughable party, with afterwhite, SAG, to hide and cheek, Edinburgh, Dublin, WC, will whatever will be written in lampish language with inbursts of Magyar always been semposed, black looking white and white guarding black, in that Siamix Tuatalk used twist stern Swift and Jolly Roger? Will it bright upon us, Nidal, and we plunging to our plight? Well, it might now, Merkel, so it light, always and ever, till Cox's wife, Mrs. Han, pokes her beak into the matter, with O and K after her, to see what smutter after, will this Kiribus pooch, filled with litterish fragments, lurk dormant in the paunch of that halp brother of a Herm, a pillar box? The coffin, a triumph of the illusionist's art, at first glance naturally taken for a hand harp, it is hand warped to distinguish Jubab from Jabul, or either from Tubot, when all three have just been invened, had been removed from the hardware premises of Etzman and Nephew, a noted house of the gone-most West, which in the natural course of all things continues to supply funeral requisites of every needed description. Why needed, though? Indeed needed. Would you feel like a rat and fowl if you hadn't the Oscar? Because the flash brides or bride in their lily boleros one games with at the Nivy Newbies finery ball, and your upright grooms that always come right up with you, and by jingo when they do. What else in the mortal world, now ours, when meet their night, mid their knock, me their knocked, made their naught the hour strikes, would bring them right came back in the flesh, thumbs down, to their horses and their hashes. To proceed, we might leave that nutrients of oxygiants to take its free of the air and electrolyze that very chimerical combination, the gas bag where the water works, and try to pour some more hydrocene up the almost fair. In the bottled Helios case continuing, long Lally Topkids, the special, sporting a fine breast of medals, and a conscientious scripture reader, to boot in the brick and tin shorts round the coroner, swore like a Norwegian tailor on the stand before the proper functionary that he was up against a right queer snort of a man in the butcher of the blues who, he continued, on last evening, after delivering some carcasses, matin chips, and meat shoots on behalf of Messrs. Otto Sands and Eastman, Limerick victualers, went and, with his unmitigated astonishment, he kicked at the Don and Doris against all the ruins, and when challenged about the pretended hick, it was kick up and down with him, on his solemn by the impudent imputed, said simply, I pop my oath, Philip's captain. You did, as I so stressed before. You are deeply in error, sir. Madam Tompkins, let me then tell you, replied with a gentle womanly salam McPartland, the Meatman's family and the oldest in the world except Nick Name, and Phelps was playful with his peeler, but his fizz fell. Now to the obverse. From velveteens to dimities is barely a 5-finger span, and hence these camelback excesses are thought to have been instigated by one or either of the causing causes of all. those rushy hollow heroines in their skirt sleeves, be she Magreta, be she the Post. Oh, oh, because it is a horrible thing to have to say today, but one Delilah Lupita Lorette, shortly after, in a fit of the unexpectedness, drank carbolic with all her dear placid life before her, and paled off, while the other, soiled dove, that's her sister in love, Luperca Latouche, finding one day, while dodging chores, that she stripped teasily for binocular man, and that her jams were Tim joy to see each other, the naughty girl soon found her fruitful hat too small for her, and rapidly taking time, look, she rapidly took to necking, partying, and selling her spare favors in the haymow, or in lumber closets, or in the Grenon ad hoc. There are certain intimacies in all ladies' lavatories we just lease to imagination. Or in the sweet churchyard close itself, for a bit of soft coal, or an array of thin trunks, serving whom in fine that same hot coney alla zingara, with her own little grania of the chillirid cheeks dished up to the great sire of Oscar, that son of a cool, Houri of the coast of Emerald, Era of the lassessive Pogue, a slim all-Muslim, the resigned to her surrender, did not she, come Leinster's even, true daughter of a Diarmid, her pitch was 40 steps, and his perch, old Cromwell's quarters, with so Valkyrie a license as sent many a poor pucker packing to perdition, again and again, aye, and again, svidar him, tis fido, tis fido, tis fido, twos topple, stop, dog of a gower ye, Angelos me. And did not he, like Arco Forti, far off be Sovolo, misbrand her behaviors with iridescent hue cry of downright mean false sop lapsic dope? Taufelsreck, a reign of the she, a shebeen queen, a queen of pranks. A kingly man of royal mien, regally robed, exalted be his glory. So gave, so take, now not now. He would just come in, suffering trumpet. He thought he want, what? Here, oh here, living of the land. Hungrib, dead era, hark. He hay, eyes ravenous on her lippling lils. He hear her boy of day gone by. He hears, say. But by the beard of his prophet, he cannot answer. Up to putty till rise and shine. Nor needs none shaft ne steel from Phoenicia or Little Asia to obelize on the spout, neither pobble clock, neither folkstone, nor sunkenness in Tomer's wood, to bewray how express gangs score off the rude. The mouth that tells not will ever attract the unthinking tongue. And so long as the obscene draws theirs, which hear, not so long till all earth's damnation shall the blind lead the deaf. Tacho, tawny yeeklings. The column of lumps lends the pattern of the leaves behind us. If violence to life, limb, and chattels, often as not, has been the expression, direct or through an agent male, of womanhood offended, has not levy of black male from the times the fairies were in it, and fain for wild earth blossoms followed an impressive private reputation for whispered sins? Now by memory inspired, turn wheel again to the hole of the wall, where giant plant fronts Pien Lumor. There was once upon a wall, and a hoog wall was, and such a wall hole did exist, ere or ire in Ireland, or you dares hair, or you digging mosses, or your hoard of arts and your yorts to garble the garden of Odin, and the lost Paradise, when all the Edams ended with Abe's. And then the Doon is theirs, and still to see from Finnegans, if he strikes a louseforch, and we'll come to those Bergay's shoe shines if you just shut up a second. And the dogs be good old gaggles, and Ister Esther play Yester Aster, and the dream of sorstos Darius diseased. A stone-hinged gate, then, was for another thing. Well, the surreptimist had bought and enlarged that shack under fair rental of one yearling sheep, prime, value of sixpence, and one small yearling goat, cadet, value of eightpence, to grow old and happy, hogged and kid him, for the remnants of his years. And when everything was got up for the purpose, he put an applegate on the place, by no means as some pretext a bedstead in lieu thereof, to keep out donkeys. The pig dirt hanging from the jags to this hour makes that clear. And just then abouts the iron gate, by old custom left open to prevent the cats from getting at the gout, was triple padlocked on him on purpose of his faithful porters, to keep him inside probably, and possibly an entree felt like sticking out his chest too far and tempting gracious Providence by a stroll on the peopled's egg day, unused as he was yet to being freely clodded. Oh, by the by, let's we brag of praties, it ought to be always remembered in connection with what has gone before, that there was a North Roomer, Herr Betrofender, out for his Zimmer holidays, digging in number 32 at the Rum and Puncheon, branch of Dirty Dick's free house in Laxlip, where the sockeye salmons were stopping at the time orange fasting. Prior to that, a commercial, Goraboti Paco, he was reeking like Zentral oil rubber from Osterich, the USE paying, God save the mark, 11 shillings in the week. Gosh, these holy Romans. Of conscious money in the first deal of July, while he was swishing bee's nest with pleasure and swabbing Brogin Irish mit broken Deutsch, making his reporterage under Fall Adams for the Frankfurter Zeitung, a Fastland periodicule. And ere constated that one had on him the Lynn O'Brien, a Meltone lamb's wool disturbed, and wider he might the same Zurich's chicken, other he would with Roseend and Obertosen toner waters, one monkey's damages become. Now you must know, Frank's man, to make a heart of glass, that the game of gaze and bandstand butchery was merely a patio-strap tissue of threats and abuses, such as Roebuck's raff at, Pinnacle's speak, and after this sort. Humphrey's unsolicited visitor, Davy or Titus, on a Burgley's clan march from the Middle West, a highly excellent crude man about road who knew his bull-foosed mountains like a starling bird, after doing a long dance untitled to cloudy green, deposed his box stump on the what you may want 'em, after having blew some Quakers, for you oats, in through the house king's keyhole to attract attention, pleaded through the gale outside, which the terror of his clothes was hog-collaring, first be the hirsute that he would break his Bolshewigger's head for him, next be the heel tapter that he would break the gauge over his lanky duckling head the same way he would crack a nut with a monkey wrench, and last of all be the stir about her. They would give him his, or the person's, or anybody else's, thicker than water to drink, and his bloody step-brothers into the bucket. He demanded more wood alcohol to pitch in with, alleging that his grandfather's was all taxis, and that it was only after 10 o'connell, and this his isbar was a public oven for the sake of Urskusky, and then not easily discouraged, opened the wrath floods of artillery and went on at a wicked rate, weathering against him in mooks metaphors from 11:30 to 2 in the afternoon without even a luncheonette interval. For house, son of Claude, to come out, you Jew beggar, to be executed, amen. Earwicker, that pattern mind, that paradigmatic ear, receptor retentive as his of Dionysus long-suffering, although whitening under restraint in the sitted-out corner of his conservatory, behind famine-built walls, his thermos flask and Rapidian flavel by his side, and a walrus whisker bristle for a toothpick, compiled, while he mourned the flight of his wild geese, a long list, now feared and part lost, to be kept on file of all abusive names he was called. We have been compelled, for the rejoicement of fine ladies and the humors of Milltown, etc., by Josephine Brewster in the collision known as contrastations with Inkerman and so on and so onward, Lacey's in Loo water, flee celestials one clean turf. First nighter, informer, old fruit, yellow wigger, wheat ears, goldy gate, bogside beauty. Yes, we've had his bananas, York's porker, funny face. At Baggety's Bend he bumped, grease with the butter, open door auspices, Cain enabler, Ireland's eighth wonderful wonder, beat my price, God Soilman, Moonface the murderer, hoary hair hoax, midnight sunburst, remove that Bible, heb dromedary pub location, Tummer the lame, the tyrannous, Blau clay, tight before tea time, read your panto joke, acoustic disturbance, thinks he's Gobless the good Duke of Argyll, W.D.'s Grace, gibbering behemoth of Dublin. His father was a Munzucker, and she had him in a growler. Burnham and Bailey, artist, unworthy of the homely Protestant religion. Terry Cotter, you're welcome to Waterford, signed the ribbon men. Lobster pot lardling, all for Arthur of this town. Whoosh the cat from the bacon, leather togs Donald, the ace and deuce of paupering, O'Reilly's delights to kiss the man behind the barrel. Magog, Gagog, Swad Paddlefoot, Gouty Gibelline, Loose Luther, Hatches Cock's eggs, Muddle the plan, Luck before wedlock. I divorce thee, husband, Tanner and a make. Go to Helena or come to Connie's. Fabled Puff Puff his bride, purged out of Burke's, he's none of me cousin. Barbarian, peculiar person, grunt owl's factotum, 12 months aristocrat, lycanthrope, flunky beetle vamps the tune, letting on he's lonely, thunder and turf married into Clondarf, left boot sent on approval, cumberer of Lord's holy ground, Starge Arshman, Aunt Uke, Tommy Furlong's pet plagues, Archduke and Cavenger, last past the post. Kennelly won't tell thee of Nancy's gown. Soodle to cover, salary grab, Andy McNoon in Annie's room, all out, Twitch Bratch balls, Bombard Street Bester, Sublime Porter, a band for the King of the Bergens, and a bomb for the Sir of all the Rutledges, Ophelim's cut price, and at number 111. What he done to Castle Costello? Sleeps with feathers and ropes. It is known who sold Horace the Rattler. Enclosed find the sons of Fingal, swayed in his falling, wants a wife and 40 of them. Let him do the fair. APG Quinee, Chimuk. Plup goes his wassail, ruin of the small trader. He, milking honey beaver brooker. V was a vintner, sour rapes, Armenian atrocity, sick fish belly up, Edomite. Man devoid of the commoner characteristics of an Irish nature. Bad Humburg, Brad Rab, Kuchen Handler, Dirt, Mitching Daddy, Born Burst Feast Foremost, Woolworth's Worst, Easy Catholic, Phalosophist, Guilty Pig's Bastard, Fast in the Barrel, Booze in the Bed, Mr. Fatmate, in custody of the police, Bowell's allocutionist deposed. But anarchistically respectful of the liberties of the non-invasive individual, did not respond a solitary woodward beyond such sedentarity, though it was as easy as kiss anywhere for the passive resistant in the booth he was in to reach for the Hello Gripes and to ring up Kimmage Outer 1767. Because, as the fundamentalist explained, when at last shocked into speech, touching his wounded feelings in the fusher, the Dominican mission for the South Sealist party was on at the time, and he thought the Romish devotion known as the Holy Rosary might reform him, gone. That more than considerably unpleasant bullocky before he rang off drunkishly pegged a few glat stones, all of a size, by way of final mocks for his grapes, at the wicket in support of his words that he was not guilty. But after he had so slung a volleyed, reconnoitering through his semi-subconsciousness the seriousness of what he might have done had he really polished off his terrible intentions, finally caused him to change the bawling and leave down the whole grimace of Brook Pebble's pang-pang, and having sobered up a bit, paces his ground old Dyblin lion dub, the flay the phlegm, the floody fleshner, Perseverus, I'll splish the splume of them all. This backblux bore brusquely put out his language and quite quit the paleologic scene, telling how, by his self-denying ordinance, he had left Highland on the dissenting table after exhorting Earwicker, or in slightly modified phraseology, Messrs. Earwicker, Sayre, his feminizable name of multitude, to come outside to Mockerloo out of that for the honor of Crumlin, with his broody old flishguds, Garks cursed to them, so as he could brain slug and burst him all dizzy, you go bail like Potts Fracture did with Kettle Flatnose, and nobody at all with Holy Famous, and build rocks over him. Or if he didn't, for 32 straws, be Campbell, he didn't know what he wouldn't do for him, nor nobody else no more, nor him after which battle martel, a brisha, a miller, a stroke, a bulas, or the rage of Malbrook, playing on the least change of his Manchester's voice. The first heroic couplet from the Fugal Tropical, Opus Elf 32. My schemes into abeyance for this time has had to fall. They bid goodbye to their thumb, and his bandolier, his soldier, drip, drop, drap, on pool or polger, wishing the loft of a followed fian in the morning, proceeded with a Hubbleforth slouch in his slips backwards, et cure hilly, in the directions of the Duff and Dem institutions about 10 or 1100 years lurch away in the moonshiny gorge of Patself on the Bach. Adieu. And thus, with this Rochely executor of Bullyacre, came to close that last stage in the sieging round our arch citadel, which we would like to recall, if old Nestor Alexis would wink the worth for us, as Bar le Duc and Dog and Doris and Bangin' Up Zoom. Yet he made leave so many a door beside of Oxman's wold, for so witnesses chambered cairns, a cloud of littler, silent, that are at brows uphill and down Coombe and on Eliolothostron, at Hoth or at Coolock, or even at Enniskerry, a theory none too rectiligne of the evolution of human society, and a testament of the rocks from all the deed and to some the living. Oliver's lambs we do call them, scatterlings of a stone, and they shall be gathered unto him, their herd and paladin, as nubilets to cumule, and that day when, same the lightning lancer of Azava, Arthur Lionherd, some Finn avant, he shall wake from earth's sleep, hot-crested Elmer, in his vale of briars of Greenman's rise, oh, lost leaders live, the heroes return, and o'er Dune and Dale, the Wolver Lord, protect us, his mighty horns shall roll, Orland, roll. For in those days his Deus shall ask of all pro home, and call to him, all pro home, and he make answer, Adsum, nor wink nor wunk, animadabilum, mene credidisti mortuum. Silence was in thy frosted halls, O Truiga, when thy green woods went dry. But there will be sounds of many mirth on the night's ear ringing when our patriarch of Constantinople gets the pullover on his boots. Liver poor? Sought a bit of it. His brains cooled parrot, his pelt nasty, his heart a drone, his blood streams a crawl, his puff but a piff, his extremities extremely so. Fenglis, Pembroke, Chilblaimand, and Baldol, Humph is in his doge. Words weigh no more to him than raindrips to Rathfarnham, which we all like, rain, when we sleep. Drops. But wait until our sleeping train stops.